Hello, everyone. My name is Elliot Schrage, and I'm the Vice President of Global Communications and Public Affairs at Google. I want to thank you all for coming. It's truly a pleasure and an honor for me to be here with so many representatives of non-governmental and nonprofit organizations who are partnering with us and who I hope perhaps will become partners with Google. One of the things that distinguishes Google, at least for me, is our mission: to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. A tremendous amount of attention is paid to the commercial aspects of that mission, how Google and the technologies we're developing are changing the way people advertise and market their products, and how our technologies provide new commercial opportunities for the so-called long tail of businesses, helping businesses find customers who are interested in their products and services. It's something that we read about, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with. But actually at Google, there are an awful lot of us who believe that the non-commercial aspects of our innovations and technologies are just as, if not more important, than the commercial ones. We think that the technologies we're developing can be an important catalyst for education, for sharing information, for advocacy, and to address global and local issues that affect everyone around the world, in local communities and in our global community. These technologies can provide access to new information, to collect information and examine them, examine information in new and different ways, and help people have a better understanding. We're committed to providing the nonprofit sector, from grassroots organizations and established global philanthropies, with robust, easy-to-use, scalable technology that they can use despite limited technological or financial resources. These tools will help make, I hope, all of you much, much more effective in the work that you do. We've done this in a number of ways. To date, the most important initiative that we've adopted is to nurture what is called the marketplace of ideas. The marketplace that we hope will parallel the commercial marketplace has been a program we call Google Grants. Since its founding a few years ago, the Google Grants program has given advertising credits of more than $150 million to more than 2,500 nonprofit organizations around the world. These credits help groups better identify people who use the internet who are interested in their work, to inform those users, to engage them, and hopefully inspire them to action. As you can imagine, this is a huge program, and I'm particularly proud that it's a program that, under the leadership of one of my colleagues, Sheryl Sandberg, has enlisted over 700, almost 800 volunteers at Google who are involved in reviewing applications and overseeing and implementing the program. It's a remarkable program that we think has had huge impact. We believe that Google Earth offers another incredible platform to help the nonprofit community. Google Earth helps users understand complex issues and places far away from home. The marriage of satellite imagery, 3D mapping technology, and search makes geographic information easily accessible, understandable, and useful. It empowers organizations to communicate, to educate, and advocate in order to improve our world. This was really brought home to me earlier, just a few months ago, when we announced the partnership that Google was doing with the US Holocaust Memorial Museum on crisis in Darfur. I hope many of you may have seen it and used it. It's an incredibly vivid, powerful way of demonstrating to people, informing people what's going on in a faraway part of the world, and encouraging them to better understand what's going on. We're particularly pleased that after we announced that partnership, the amount of traffic to the site and the amount of usage of that layer went up substantially. We believe that the same kind of impact can apply to any nonprofit organization willing to make the time and investment in leveraging these new technologies. We believe that Google Earth can revolutionize the way people understand the world around them. There's so many disparate and confusing information out there. We feel Google Earth can serve to crystallize and illustrate You are here today because you all have important stories to tell, and we want to help. With that, I want to introduce John Hanke, who's Director of Google Earth and Maps. John is the co-founder of Keyhole, a company that Google acquired in 2004. And John and his team, and John personally, has been instrumental in leading our geo initiatives. I'm delighted that John is here to provide details on the new program we're launching today. John.
Thanks, Elliot. Before I talk about the details of the announcement that we have today, I wanted to speak just a couple of minutes about how we got here. So we co-founded this little company called Keyhole back in, or I co-founded this company back in 2000. And that was really the starting point for creating this thing that is Google Earth today, this Earth browser. One of my co-founders, Mark Aubin, is here with us today and be available to chat with you guys later as well. We had a pretty clear idea, I think, of what we wanted to create from a technical point of view. We wanted to create this kind of mirror world of the real world. We wanted to create on your computer something that replicated reality as closely as we could, using satellite imagery and digital terrain models and all the map data that we could get our hands on. And we thought we knew what people wanted to do with it. So we had brainstorming sessions to think about, well, how's this product going to be used? And we thought about, really practical things like, boy, it'd be great to plan a trip. You could look at the hotel and figure out if it's close to the beach or not. Or if you're looking for a house or an apartment, boy, wouldn't it be great to explore the neighborhood using this tool? But it turns out that, we just completely didn't see the majority of uses of Google Earth. And what's unfolded over the past couple of years with the product I think it's blown away everybody on the team in terms of the way that people have used this tool. And probably the most impactful and meaningful to us are the uses that many of you in this room have made with the product. There were a couple of kind of big steps along the way. One of those was being acquired by Google. So that can change any sort of startup's perspective on the world. And for us, Larry and Sergey and their support of this project allowed us to have a much more global and long-term focus than we had as a small startup. In fact, the whole executive team was very supportive and felt like that geography and Google Earth really fit well with Google's core mission, to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And they saw geographic information and geography as a substrate and a tool for understanding as fitting in tightly with that core mission. And so they gave us a lot of support. One of the first conversations I had at Google after we were acquired was with Sergey Brin. And we were talking about expanding our imagery coverage so that we would have coverage of more areas, more geographic areas in Google Earth. And I was talking about expanding it for the United States and how I really wanted to get some imagery of Europe because I thought that would be a great opportunity for us. And he said, well, what about the rest of the world? What's available in Asia and Africa and Latin America? And so we pulled out the map and we laid out the availability of satellite imagery. And he said, well, I think we should get it all. And that was just a dramatic change of perspective for us. And we proceeded to do that. We worked with our partner, Digital Globe. And over the course of the past couple of years, I think have built the most detailed photographic representation of the world that's been created and made available to the public. Today, we have detailed satellite imagery that covers a third of the landmass of the entire world, including vast expanses of areas out in the developing world. More than half of the population of the world today can zoom down in Google Maps and Google Earth and see their home, their village, their university. That was a powerful step in kind of opening up the potential of this application. The second big step for us was in discovering that users had their own ideas about what they wanted to do with this product and what its best use would be. We started out with a very simple ability to let users make an annotation in Google Earth. And we thought it would be useful if you're meeting a friend before a concert or a football game. You could say, I want to meet you here, in front of the ticket window or next to this tree or this part of the parking lot. It's kind of a very practical approach. What we discovered after we launched that is that people wanted to annotate all kinds of things. And we created a little website called the Keyhole BBS, which was a place where people could share these annotations that they'd created. It was built on some threaded discussion software. I'm sure you've seen it at many places around the web, where you can make a post with an attachment. Somebody else can respond to that. I think we paid $150 to license the software. And it's still running today, actually. And it just exploded. There are over 800,000 posts on that little $150 piece of software discussion board today. tens of millions of places around the world have been annotated through this technique. So if you fly down to places like Bangalore, India, or Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, you'll find that almost every major institution, school, soccer stadium, shopping district, beach has been annotated by users. So users are now working together to collaboratively map the world. It was a really eye-opening thing for us to see that, hey, this is what the product is all about. That was sort of driven to a new level, I think, specifically when Katrina hit New Orleans. And after that happened, we worked with NOAA to add some imagery of the city as quickly as we could to show the effects of the flooding. And we found that we were pretty fast in doing that. In fact, we were kind of the only place to go for a while to get that type of imagery overlaid with mapping data so that people could really understand what was what. And it was being used by relief workers, by families trying to figure out if their property was flooded, where their family members were, what roads were open, what roads were closed. And one of the most moving things that happened, I think, for the team, maybe in our entire time at Google, was a call that we got from the Coast Guard. And an officer called us up and said, I just want to thank you guys for creating this product. We've been sitting here all day using Google Earth and Craigslist. And Craigslist, people were posting where stranded individuals were located. So they were using Craigslist and Google Earth to find out where people were that needed to be rescued. And he said, we've been flying helicopters in all day to rescue them. And we've been using your product for that. And we just want to thank you for putting it out there. So that opened our minds to something that we had never really considered, that there might be really significant and meaningful uses of our product. Not just sort of day-to-day utility kinds of things or interesting, fun kinds of things, but things that might really make a difference in the world. And it really inspired, in particular, some members of the team who adopted that as their 20% project. So you guys may be aware of this philosophy, this culture at Google, where any engineer can take 20% of their time and use it on whatever they want. And so some members of our team said, well, we want philanthropy to be our 20% project. We want to work with nonprofits who want to use this for good purposes. And over the course of the past year, they've devoted, honestly, probably a lot more than 20% of their time to that. But from my point of view, I think this is a classic case where doing the right thing was a very good thing for our team and for the morale of our team. Because being involved with groups like yours and working on these very noble initiatives is very inspirational to the people on our team. We get to vicariously enjoy the good feeling that I know you have to know that you're doing good and meaningful work. And it's became, over the course of the past year, a really key part of what we're doing in the Geo team at Google. We worked with over 100 public service organizations over the past year, our team did. And worked with them to help explain how to use Google Earth. And there are kind of a number of themes that emerged from that. One was disaster response, and we got involved in some other places. The earthquake in Kashmir was another example of that. But another sort of major, sort of group of people had, really important data about stuff that's going on in the world, animals, the environment, but they needed a way to present that data in a way that really told a story that would be compelling to people. Because what we found is that a lot of groups out there want to move people to action. You want to get your story out in a way that really connects with people. The other thing that we sort of discovered through working with these groups is that one of the major appeals of Google Earth is that it can connect these global issues to very specific local realities. I think the Darfur layer that we did with the Holocaust Museum is a great example of that. Because here you have this kind of geopolitical issue that's going on. And with Google Earth in that presentation, you can zoom down to an individual village, to an individual building that's been burned out. And you can see the shell of that building sitting there. You can click on an image that shows somebody from that village that's been maimed by the attack and read their story. It's a very powerful way to communicate, the global and the local. But we found that people needed technical help to make the best use of the program, to really create the most compelling layers. The other thing that we found is that people were really interested in the audience that we had begun to accumulate with Google Earth. Today, over 250 million unique users around the world have downloaded and successfully installed Google Earth on their computers. So we have a very, very large audience of users that are using this. And we felt like it's kind of our obligation to use that audience for for something good, as well as sort of the normal things that we do. And showcasing some of the great work that you guys have done is something that we began to do in the project. So that's kind of the background of where we got here today. And so I'm very happy to announce that we're now officially launching a program called Google Earth Outreach as of today. So this is Google's formal commitment to this endeavor. The 20% time got it started, the passion of these individuals got it started, but now Google is stepping up and validating this as a bona fide program that will be staffed in our group. There are several components to this, but the key idea is that it's designed to help nonprofit organizations quickly and easily get the resources they need to create compelling content in Google Earth. So just to walk you through some of the major features of the site, the first thing, and this is our homepage, we have a showcase where we're going to feature really good work that's been done by our nonprofit partners, with our help in some cases. And this is an example. This includes work that many of you have done over the past year. And so this is there. It's featured on the site. Some of these will be featured within the Google Earth client application itself. And so our goal with this is to shine the spotlight of public awareness on the very important messages that you're trying to communicate. A second part of the site are case studies. We want to share the stories of how this great content got created. And so many of you have worked closely with us to help author these over the past few weeks. And they're just wonderful stories that talk about how we've gone about planning and executing on these very compelling layers. And we hope this will make it easier for more nonprofits as they come into the fold and start doing this kind of work to get started. Technical support is something that is a key part of this. So we have an authoring language. It's called KML. It's the HTML of marking up the Earth. It's pretty easy to use, but it's a new thing. So it has to be explained. And we've gone to a lot of work here to do things like video tutorials to make this process of making this kind of content as easy as possible, and to show some examples of best practices for making the best possible balloons and the best possible presentation of this data. There's a great feature here I wanted to highlight, by the way, which makes use of another Google product called spreadsheets. So this lets people use a very simple online spreadsheet application that we launched recently to basically create a live version of your information. And you can just modify it right in the spreadsheet. And we provide a template that outputs a live KML link for Google Earth. That means that you can go in and update that data at any time just by editing a cell in a spreadsheet, and it gets pushed out to the Google Earth users who have subscribed to that layer. It's a really powerful tool. And the spreadsheet team out here in New York helped us build that. Finally, there are forums. So part of this is just connecting with you, the nonprofits, and with our engineering staff to answer questions, to help resolve issues, and just help folks build great content, and to help nonprofits connect with one another. People that are involved in doing this kind of work can get in touch, can share their own experiences, can share tips, techniques, and even code if they want to. These forums will be actively manned by Google employees. And finally, I guess the last point is there's also a program where users can apply for license grants. So Google Earth Free is an incredibly powerful application, but we have an even more powerful application called Google Earth Pro, which normally sells for $400 per user per year. This is going to be made available for free, basically to any nonprofit that completes this very simple grant application to us. So we're actually very anxious to get this even more powerful version of Google Earth out to the nonprofit community. So that's the program. We're launching it today. This website is now live. A number of new layers have also been launched this morning in Google Earth that showcase this activity. And we expect that it will evolve over the next year. Like all Google products, we want to launch early and often, listen to our users, and evolve and improve as we go. So I want to recognize the Google Earth team, because this was really built with you and with these folks who basically gave up their nights and weekends to make this happen over the past year. So if you guys could stand up, I'd really appreciate it. They're all wearing, come on, stand up. So you're looking at some very passionate and very committed people who put their time and energy, who put their lives to work to make this happen. And they're going to be around the rest of the day. You'll see their t-shirts, so feel free to chat with them. I'm sure they would be glad to provide whatever help and support they can while they're here this afternoon. So I'm going to spend the rest of our time here with some people, with some very important people who have been working with the outreach program over the past year or so. And the first partner is a woman who really needs no introduction, but I'm happy to provide one for her, and that's Jane Goodall. And she's going to be video conferencing in with us from London. There she is. Dr. Jane Goodall, DB. Hello. She was the founder of the Jane Goodall Institute. She's a UN Messenger for Peace. She began her landmark study of chimpanzees in Tanzania in June of 1960 under the mentorship of famed anthropologist and paleontologist Dr. Louis Leakey. Her work at the Gombe Stream Chimpanzee Reserve became the foundation of future primatological research and redefined the relationship between humans and animals. In 1977, Dr. Goodall established the Jane Goodall Institute, JGI. Today, JGI is a global organization supporting the research at Gombe, in addition to many other programs for research, education, community development, and conservation programs. In 2002, Dr. Goodall was invested by UN Secretary General Kofi Annan as a UN Messenger of Peace. Other honors include the Medal of Tanzania, the National Geographic Society's Hubbard Medal, Japan's prestigious Kyoto Prize, and the... They're all very important, and I want to read each and every one of them. And the UNESCO's 60th anniversary for nonviolence. In 2003, the Franklin Institute's Benjamin Franklin Medal in Life and Science and Spain's coveted Prince of Asturias Award. In February of 2004, Dr. Goodall was awarded England's highest honor, Dame of the British Empire, at a ceremony at Buckingham Palace. And in February 2006, she received France's highest honor, the Legion of Honor. I'm actually really in awe of Jane, and I'm delighted that she could be here today. And I love the work that we did, the Geoblog that we did on the preserve, and I'm really anxious to hear what she has to say. Over to you.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you for the introduction. They were laughing at me because I was saying we don't need all these honors and awards, but I wish I was actually with you. And I have been at Google events several times, always in person. So this is, a little different from normal. And what's interesting to me is, when I began in 1960, my tools consisted of a piece of paper and a pencil. And there were no such things as faxes. There was no such thing as email. There were telegrams, which most young people don't even know of. And gradually, the equipment at Gombe became a little bit more sophisticated. We had tape recorders. One or two people entered their data onto laptops, but mostly it was the good old-fashioned typewriter. And then really we started into a new era when Dr. Lilian Pintea came to Gombe, and he worked with satellite imagery and GIS technology. He set up GPS control points, not only within Gombe National Park, but area outside, which we call Greater Gombe Ecosystem, which used to be, at least in large part, accessible to chimpanzees in 1960. But over the years since then, human population growth, the arrival of refugees, terrible overpopulation in this very difficult rocky mountain soil, has seen deforestation, has seen soil erosion, increasing poverty, people struggling to survive. And Lilian was able to go into the villages, to work with the villagers to map out the extent of the environmental degradation outside the park and compare it with earlier satellite images. And one of the things which was surprising and interesting, helpful, was that the villagers who are not at all experienced with flat maps and couldn't really understand them, when they saw 3D images, they suddenly began to realize and get excited and say, yes, this is where that is. And so we got all that cooperation. And gradually, as this technology developed and Lillian got more and more information and more people were contributing to this picture, we were able to use some of this technology to advise the President of Tanzania as an environmental advisory committee, to talk to them about water resource management. We were able to work with Tanzania National Parks on planning some conservation strategies. And all of this helped our relationship very much with the local people. And I think it's our relationship with Google Earth, along with our other partners, Digital Globe and ERSI, that's putting the Jane Goodall Institute into a whole new era. And it's a very, very exciting era. It's helping us to plan different aspects of our own research. It's certainly helping us hugely with our conservation efforts. And it's also enabling us to involve a wider audience of people. And this has been particularly so since with Google Earth, we developed, I believe it was the very first Geoblog, so that our supporters or potential supporters can actually zoom in over Gombe and see the very places that they can read about in books that I've written. And they can actually get updates on this blog several times a week about the different chimpanzees, see where the chimpanzees are, sometimes see photographs of them. People get really involved, really excited about this. So it's being described as rather like a soap opera for wild chimpanzees. The entire relationship with Google Earth has been stimulating, been exciting. We couldn't be more thrilled with this partnership. And I think the Google Earth outreach program is absolutely fantastic. And I just feel that we're very fortunate to have been part of moving this whole wonderful effort forward. So I think that's really all that I need to say at this point, except once again, I really do wish that I was with you in person and in a very different mode from this wonderful technology that we're seeing today. I'm going to give you a communication in the way I know best, which is the chimpanzee greeting across space to all of you over there. Very non-technological, very efficient. Every chimpanzee with his or her own voice is thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Goodall. I hope you'll be able to stick around for 10 to 15 minutes for some Q&A in a bit. I have another very important guest that I want to introduce from the United Nations, Cathy Bushkin Calvin. We've done a lot of great work with the UN, including the UNEP, which was a layer showing environmental change around the world. Cathy Bushkin Calvin is the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of the United Nations Foundation. The United Nations Foundation was created in 1998 with businessman and philanthropist Ted Turner's historic gift to support UN causes. The UN Foundation builds public-private partnerships to address the world's most pressing problems and works to broaden support for the UN through advocacy and public outreach. The UN Foundation is a public charity. Prior to joining the UN Foundation, Cathy Bushkin Calvin served as president of the AOL Time Warner Foundation, which she led from its creation in 2001. When AOL and Time Warner merged, Ms. Bushkin also guided AOL Time Warner's other philanthropic activities and was the chief architect of the company's corporate responsibility initiatives. Cathy Bushkin Calvin joined America Online in 1997 as senior vice president and chief communications officer at America Online, following a career in politics, journalism, and public relations. Throughout her career, Ms. Bushkin has taken an active role in a large range of philanthropic activities. She currently serves on the boards of City Year, the International Women's Media Foundation, Internews, Share Our Strength, the National Women's Law Center, and the United Nations Association of the United States of America. In 1999, she and Art Bushkin founded the Stargazer Foundation, which provides free online tools for nonprofits through the web platform stargazernet.net, which I've seen, and it's also very cool. Please help me welcome Cathy.
Well, you know how they say you should never follow the elephants in a parade. It's pretty hard to follow the chimpanzees on stage. But I'm delighted to be here and really proud to be a partner with Google and Google Earth and Google.org. It's really great to see an organization that has committed itself to social change, whether it's coming from its corporate side or its nonprofit side. That's really the future, and that's what we should all be working toward. I'll be very quick. I'm actually representing today my UN colleagues from UNDP, UNEP, and UNESCO who are here, and I hope you'll have a chance to meet them and talk to them about their experience in working with Google Earth in getting this thing launched and really revolutionizing the way the UN thinks about its data and the way that it can communicate around the world about the problems that it's solving. That's really why we're all here today, and it's why Ted Turner created the UN Foundation 10 years ago. He really saw a need for all of us to work together and to broker, convene, and offer opportunities for organizations like yours to work with the UN, to share information and get things done. And today, I think we're seeing a new tool for all of our work together in getting things done, because there's nothing like the power of information to make sure people understand the urgency of action and the opportunity for getting together to work on it. I want to congratulate Google and Google Earth for taking this step and challenge all of us in the room to be co-creators, because this will only be as good a product as the information we bring to it and as the way we evolve in our own way of thinking about information and how we use it. So I hope this will become the beginning of a process for all of us to talk about what information means, how we share it with others, and how we use it to change the world. Thank you very much for including us today.
Thank you, Cathy. There's more great layers from the UN in the works. Our final guest this morning is Edward Wilson of Earthwatch. And we just launched this morning the Earthwatch Global Layer. Edward Wilson is president and CEO of Earthwatch Institute, the international volunteer organization engaging people worldwide in scientific field research and education to promote the understanding and action necessary for a sustainable environment. Through its offices in the USA, UK, Australia, and Japan, Earthwatch Institute recruits nearly 4,000 paying and corporate-funded volunteers each year in support of a program of over 140 scientific research projects in 55 countries worldwide. Since its inception, Earthwatch has recruited more than 81,000 volunteers to assist field researchers in 119 countries, representing 10.8 million hours of donated time and $57 million in funding. It's a really awesome program that connects what you're seeing on Google Earth, as Ed and I were talking about this morning, with the real world, so people can transition from reading about it and exploring it to actually going and doing. So please join me in welcoming Ed.
Thanks, John, Elliot, and everyone at Google and Google Earth. I have to say the Earthwatch staff around the world are incredibly nervous right now. My reputation with technology precedes me. I'm normally not even allowed to go near a PowerPoint presentation. So if all the screens go blank, it is me. I'm afraid I have that effect. But we are delighted to be partnering with Google Earth. It really is, as we said, something that's just launching today, something that we're immensely proud of to be part of the Global Awareness Program. Why, I guess, is this partnership so important to us? I think it's important because, without being melodramatic, the world is facing huge environmental challenges. The next decade is an absolutely critical one. If we're going to make a difference towards moving towards a more sustainable future, then it's going to be based on three things. And they happen to be three things which I think will come out of this partnership. The first is that we must create awareness. We must actually give people the opportunity to realize that what they're reading about is not happening somewhere out of sight, out of mind, but is happening on this very, very small planet we call Earth. And the one great thing about Google Earth is it shrinks the planet. So suddenly those issues become accessible. Those places become places that you can actually visit and that you can see. And I think that that is an absolutely important first step in terms of inspiring people and making them want to make a difference. The second piece is that we've got to have understanding. We've got to educate. We've got to understand what's happening in the world today. Earthwatch, as you heard, is supporting a program of over 140 research projects in some 55 different countries around the world. We can provide access to those programs, to those projects, and allow people to explore, to visit these projects, find out what the issue is, find out what the research is trying to achieve, and learn about it. And understanding the issues is critical. If we're to come up with sustainable solutions, it's going to have to be based on objective, science-based information, not hot air, not media hype. It needs solid, sound science. The difficulty is, with 140 scientists working in 55 different countries, is that sometimes that information stays very local. And I think one of the challenges for Earthwatch is to create this tool that allows scientists, supported by Earthwatch in different parts of the world, to share their information, to share their data, so that scientists who are working on a similar issue in different parts of the globe can actually zoom in, see what's happening, and share those results and that information. It's going to be very, very exciting. Imagine a turtle researcher in Costa Rica sharing their data with a turtle researcher in Malaysia. But the third piece, in many ways, is the most exciting. You can have the best science in the world. You can have the best data in the world. But unless we get people involved, unless we get key stakeholders involved in this process, it's not going to move the dial. And what I love about this partnership is that every single one of those logos, Earthwatch logos behind me, is not just a logo on a map. It is a gateway. It is a gateway for people to actually go through the screen, join the project, be a team member, be a volunteer, and actually work on the ground alongside these scientists on the critical issues that are facing us over the next decade. That is an incredible, incredible tool if we're going to mobilize people to make a difference. And I think from an environmental point of view, that's often the hardest thing, is that these issues are so big and so complex that how do I as an individual really make a difference? How can I get involved? How can I do something? Well, this is your gateway. This gives you your opportunity to get inspired, to learn about the issues, and ultimately to get out there and get involved. So to close, it's often been said, and it's a sort of familiar quote, that the first step is the hardest in terms of making a difference. Well, I would like to rephrase that and say that really it's the first click that's the hardest. Everything else after that is great. So thank you.
That's awesome. It's inspiring to me just to watch the video sort of playing in the background there. My 9-year-old son, the other evening, we were flying around some of this content at home, and he said, "Dad, you just go to work every day and fly around Google Earth?" I laughed, but it was a little too close to home, actually. I think we've allocated about 10 minutes to take questions. And so I'd like to invite our speakers back up, and Jane, virtually, if she's still there, to answer them. And I think Susan Meyer is going to join us from the UN. So we'll get some chairs set up here. And I'm told that because this is going to be broadcast on YouTube and so on, that we'd really like people to go to the mics. So there's a mic on each side. So if you guys could sort of queue up on those mics, I'd love to be able to take some questions from you. While we're getting set up, some of you might be wondering, how effective can these be in really bringing people to action? The Appalachian Mountaintop Removal Project, there was a great fact shared with me by Rebecca Moore, the leader of the outreach team last night. This is about basically wiping out mountaintops in the United States. It's a mining activity. It's incredibly destructive. And they wanted to get some signatures. And within a few days of launching their layer, they had over 11,000 signatures, far more than they expected, from all 50 states, and actually more than, I think, 31 countries around the world. So incredibly effective in a very short period of time. So take a question over here.
Thank you. My name's, can you hear me? Yes? Yes? Good. I'm Tim Forsman, International Center for Remote Sensing Education. and a longtime observer of Google Earth, as John Hanke well knows. One of the concerns has been with GIS and remote sensing and these other technologies, which of course Google Earth is blending together wonderfully, has been that you don't have the experts telling you exactly what's going on in the pixel. And you don't have experts telling you exactly the geo-referencing components. And so the question is, are you worried or concerned about the public using what heretofore was reserved for a much more august academic and scientific community? Thank you.
It'd be interesting to hear what Jane has to say about that. I think, that example, the geoblogging in the Gombe Preserve, I think is a great example of the fact that this isn't traditional use of this kind of geospatial data. It's something very different. And, the geoblog, connecting people with what's happening, being able to see the habitat, to really, sort of get into it in that immersive way, I think is an incredibly powerful tool for that. And, the accuracy, is it 1 meter accurate or 10 meters accurate, I think is really less the issue here. It's really about showing people and drawing people in. But I'd be delighted to hear what our guests have to say about that.
I guess I'd approach it from an Earthwatch point of view, just in terms of the scientific information that's out there and how it's used. And I think that there is a challenge, I think, for the scientific community as a whole to make their research accessible. And I think that while there may be a tendency, if you like, to protect your data, I think there's a greater value in making that data available for the common good. And I think that people are interested. I'm just trying to think of specific applications, but if you're doing a work in, say, looking at migration routes, I think people are interested in seeing what the impact is of climate change on migration routes, for example. And so I think the more that we can provide access to that sort of what up till now has been, if you like, technical or at least privileged scientific information, then it's going to make these issues alive. It's going to make them real. And I'm a strong believer that data shouldn't just sit on shelves. It shouldn't just inform scientific journals. It's got to be out there so the public can actually see what's going on.
Well, shall I say something?
Please.
I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
You can? Okay. Well, I'd simply like to say that I totally agree with that. Right from the very beginning, I wanted to share everything that I discovered at Gombe. I was criticized by scientists to begin with for writing popular books, which I said, well, it's accurate. And so this is really now like a culmination of everything I've dreamed of, getting all the information we possibly can out to as many people as we can. And if we want to save chimpanzees and forests and other creatures around the planet, because we are losing biodiversity so fast, then this is the way to do it. This is the way to reach not just into people's minds, but into their hearts as well. And you need to have the visual, even if it's virtual visual, imagery to get your heart involved. So thank you again, Google Earth.
I would just add, what's interesting to me is from a broader perspective is this is a debate that exists about the internet as a whole. Google's committed to this whole concept of democratizing access to information. And what we're announcing today is really just one piece of that, which is geospatial information. But the criticism of the internet in terms of not making information available or trying to segregate it into silos for experts or that only experts have access to, I think this is something that the internet's really successfully challenged, and that is that this information is useful to all sorts of people, and the benefits of making the information accessible and available far outweigh the risks. And it's an ongoing debate, and of course there are examples of the challenges, but I think this is a great manifestation of how this geospatial data can have profound social benefits.
My name is Marianne Hitt. I'm the director of Appalachian Voices, one of the groups that utilized Google Earth. Thanks very much to Rebecca Moore and the rest of the Google Earth team. It's been an amazing partnership. And my question is about sort of the next generation of uses of Google Earth. I know it's a great tool for giving people a guided tour, And that's what we've done with mountaintop removal. And I know one of the things we're thinking about doing next is making it so people can trace the electricity that they use in their house back to actual mountains that were blown up to create their electricity. And I was just curious about what you all see as the next generation of uses of Google Earth for public benefit.
Well, after being shocked and surprised day after day for the past 2 years, I'm out of the prediction business in terms of what people will do with the tool. We've really, I think, made the transformation on our part to thinking about building a platform and building a set of tools that people can use to do their work, whatever that work is. And we're certainly trying hard to make it more capable, more powerful. We're expanding imagery where we don't yet have it. We'd like to cover the entire world with high-resolution imagery. We'd like to have multiple views over time. We're trying to get higher resolution terrain data, which would be very important to the work that you do. And we've recently added higher resolution terrain for the western part of the United States, thanks to Cathy's team. So those are the kinds of things that we're working on, just making the product better and more capable. But tell us what you need. I mean, part of this is, and part of the reason we want to engage with you is to really hear, what's lacking, what are you trying to do that you can't do. And I know we've heard from you and from others that they would like, more richer storytelling tools, interactivity within the product to convey a narrative. And those are things that we certainly hear when you say them.
Hi, my name is Adriana Pizzoli, and I'm here from the Lower East Side Girls Club of New York. We're a small community-based organization, but we have sister programs around the world that we're very excited to use the tool to connect. But my question is for you, and maybe it's an open question for discussion, is how hyper-local nonprofits and CBOs will also be able to use this tool. Organizations that maybe work within a 14-block radius. So that's just a question that I thought, I'd love to hear your input on, and anybody else in the room later on after this session.
Does the UN have anything to say about hyper-local?
There are times we try to bring the local to the global, but I'm not sure anything to add.
I think, everything's sort of local when you get down to the details. I mean, even the UNEP layer is really about very, very specific localities where change is happening, where habitat's being destroyed, glaciers are melting. And Dr. Goodall's world is a hyper-local chimpanzee world, but it's when you actually see the preserve, it's not that big, which is kind of scary in a way. I wish it were bigger. So I think the tool's sort of proving itself as being a great way to explore even these very localized kinds of things.
Yeah, I think I would add that I think the whole expression, coming out of the Earth Summit in terms of think global, act local. I've always been challenged by that because it starts on the assumption that people, you can think globally. And as I said before, some of these issues are so big that you can't get your head around. I actually think starting locally provides a point of access to issues that almost inevitably are global issues or tied in with some bigger issue. And actually, by having that sort of narrow focus and then allowing people to explore something in depth and then see how it fits in as a piece of a jigsaw to a much bigger national, international, global type issue, I think is very exciting because I think that actually is empowering rather than disempowering. And that's the big challenge with asking people to think globally, act locally. It's the wrong way around in some ways. So I'd use it as an opportunity.
Dr. Goodall, do you have anything?
I just totally agree again. We have to meet and talk because we seem to see eye to eye. But I always tell all our young people in our Roots and Shoots program, it's in nearly 100 countries around the world. And this is an opportunity ahead that we hope to develop with Google Earth, linking all our young people. But I always tell them, if you start thinking globally, you'll be so depressed you'll do nothing at all.
Yeah,
and so you say it's the wrong way around. Not only think local, act local, then realize that other people just like you care and they're acting locally as well. And suddenly, all the pieces of the jigsaw seem, possible. If everybody acts locally, put all the bits together, or it's like the stitches in a tapestry, and eventually all the holes get filled in, and we've changed the plan.
I just want to clap every time. Just a question over here.
Yeah, hi. My name is Lisa Alpert, and I work for a hyper-local organization as well, the Municipal Art Society of New York, and we do work in urban planning here in the 5 boroughs. We're doing a project with the Rockefeller Foundation this fall on a woman named Jane Jacobs, who was a legendary urban planner in New York, who sort of single-handedly shut down Robert Moses and stopped an expressway from going through Greenwich Village, but I'll stop there. At any rate, what we're intrigued with is the opportunity for New Yorkers in boroughs and communities and neighborhoods all over the city to work with us in giving us their, many local neighborhoods have created their own plans for their neighborhoods, urban 197A plans. These are urban plans for their neighborhoods that are not imposed upon them but are organically built from the neighborhood up. And we're specifically interested to hear about how the application can be used to allow not just us to post the data that we have, and we have a lot of it, and I have my GIS specialist here, we do a lot of mapping, but to allow New Yorkers, real New Yorkers, to start to tell us and how to post their own data, to enhance the amount of data that we have by allowing them access to this as well, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's something that hasn't been exploited to the extent it could be. But the basic tools are there to do that. A plan could be posted and, using KML to describe, what the intents are, to visually depict it, could include 3D models even. And with some pretty simple $150 software, you could allow users to post their own versions on that, their critiques. You can draw arrows, you can type commentary, you can upload photos. So I think you could create a very interesting public debate and discourse, using the tools that are already available. But collaboration, letting people, edit things simultaneously, that's another, that's another bit of feedback that we've gotten from the community that will feed into our product development pipeline. We've been talking a lot about Google Earth, but Google Maps as its sister product, we launched the My Maps feature a couple months ago. It's very easy now for users to make these, maps and annotations and to share them. So that's another way to get people involved in commenting back about these plans. Okay.
Hi. Is this on? Yeah. Good morning. My name is Freek Staps. I'm a correspondent for a Dutch newspaper called NRC Handelsblad. You're all familiar with that, of course. You should read it, really. If you don't mind me being the devil's advocate here for a second, but if we have all this talk about action, there's always reaction. Which kind of organizations would actually feel threatened by what you're doing right now?
I think the answer is it's really quite straightforward. The organizations that will feel threatened are organizations that don't like information to be available. And I assure you there are lots. We had some reference to that in an earlier question. But that's the challenge, that democratizing access to information, whether it's words or geospatial information.
Well, I'd comment on that a little bit. I think there's kind of, the technology's kind of undergoing this opening process in terms of overhead imagery. It's been something that, it was at one point the domain primarily of governments to use. And militaries, certainly, but also for other purposes. The USGS has been photographing the United States for decades to monitor growth, agricultural usage, forestry, and so on. But it was the tool of governments. It was used by GIS professionals. It wasn't something that normal people had access to. And I think in a lot of people's minds, people see an overhead image and they associate it with kind of the military and military uses. But like many technologies, cellular telephony and GPS, they're obviously of great benefit to the world once they're unleashed and put in the hands of people, of everyday people who have things that they want to do with those tools. So I think that kind of transformation is happening. Okay. We'll take maybe 2 more. I know lunch is next, so I'm told not to keep you guys from lunch. So maybe 2 more questions.
Yes, good morning. My question will be brief because I don't want to keep anyone from lunch. I'm Daniel John. I'm with Conservation International, based out of Washington, D.C. And our organization has also benefited from this program, so thank you very much. My question is kind of open-ended. I think one of the really great potential that we see in Google Earth is to use the platform as a means of discussion, a means of collaboration extending all the way to decision support. And I think that may be where the greatest potential lies, because it has become ubiquitous and it's a tool that anyone can use. It takes it out of the hands of GIS experts, and so that opens up a whole realm of participation, as was the previous question alluded to. And so I wanted to ask this open-ended question of where you see your organizations going in general with this idea and how Google Earth might be able to facilitate that. Thank you.
Sounds like a good question for the UN.
No, I mean, I was just sitting here thinking about kind of the next step, and it sounds like this is already happening, is extending this to be a forum for debate and discussion. And there are representatives of the UN Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization here, and I don't want to speak for them, but I certainly think they would probably have a lot of ideas on how this can promote the UN's ideals in terms of promoting discussion and education and democracy. So certainly, you know, it supports Ted Turner's vision, you know, in creating the UN Foundation and bringing people together, allowing them to share information and solve problems together, to state it simply. But I certainly think there's a lot of potential there.
Maybe we can wrap up with a comment from Dr. Goodall. I know that you used Google Earth to help communicate things that were going on in terms of deforestation and the watershed to the government in Tanzania. When you get to the point of influencing public policy and having those kinds of decisions made, does the availability of these kinds of visualizations influence that policy at all?
Absolutely. I mean, I can't prove that one of the most recent rules, laws, legislations brought in by President Kikwete is anything to do with the presentation we made to him, but the presentation was about water resource management, and the most recent law that I heard about when I was in Tanzania a couple of weeks ago was that no further building on the high slopes that could cause erosion was to be allowed. And those buildings already on the high slopes, unless they could be properly contoured, would have to be removed, because the most important thing is to protect the watershed. So even though I believe President Kikwete was thinking along those lines anyway, I know for sure that the information he got and saw with his own eyes without having to climb up the mountains must have been very supportive of this.
Thank you. So if you could join me in thanking our guests today.